A Leafs insider recently reported that the Leafs may make a Jack Eichel-sized trade very soon. Who will they trade for? We'll get to that later in this video, but first, we just want to say that 87.7% of you guys aren't subscribed, so if you're looking for a place to daily NHL and daily Leafs content, look no further and go down and hit that subscribe button. But with that out of the way, let's get right into the main topic of the video today, which is, will the Leafs make an Eichel-sized trade? And in this recent podcast, Mark Masters, a TSN Leafs reporter, was recently on. He came out and said that they're talking about maybe a blockbuster deal that boosts the Leafs, and he says, at least for this coming season, Nylander is the best contract they got. And then he adds, he's under $7 million and 40 goals. And he also goes on to say here in this interview that Brad Treliving will probably try to locate a massive trade and see if an opportunity were to arise somewhere throughout the season or maybe in the offseason. He called it a Jack Eichel-Type trade. And also in this, he says that might be why the Leafs are willing to let this whole thing play out with Nylander and not rush into a trade, because the forward is a solid value and because they expect that he could produce the same, if not more, this coming season. Removing him from the lineup, regardless of what it's for, would be a mistake. Masters says the belief with the Shanna plan and the Leafs' philosophy has been, if you have been those four guys, then you're going to have a chance every season and you're in the playoffs, which they don't want to take for granted. And Mark, obviously this is huge news coming out from a big Leafs insider here, Mark Masters, who's been reporting on the Leafs for many years, and when he comes out and says we might see a Jack Eichel type trade in Toronto, that kind of blows your mind. But I want to phrase the question to you: who do you think this player could be?
I mean, you look at the situation and you can take it in two different ways. The first way is maybe moving Nylander for a couple small pieces that could fill out your roster. You've seen when Eichel's moved, they got a couple of guys back that are competing, growing with this Buffalo team. But in my opinion, and how I took this, it was more of the Leafs maybe moving out a couple guys, a couple prospects, a couple fringe young guys that we have throughout the system to make this giant splash. Is this a situation where we could see maybe Calgary? I keep bringing them up. If they're not in the playoff hunt, one if instead of just going after Sidorov, there's a situation where Brad might be like, "Hey, we want Lindholm, we want a guy like Hanifin, we want Sidorov." There's Michael Backlund, for example. There's so many guys on this team that are on 1 year deals, and you don't know if they're going to go back. So if Calgary's out of the hunt, maybe you ship off a guy like Liljegren, our first, our couple thirds, a second, another first, a couple prospects, and just make this giant trade. You see, the Jets are another team. You have a guy like Mark Scheifele, who I'm not really a fan of, but he's an amazing player. You have a guy like Ehlers, just these Kyle Connor guys that you can make this giant splash with, which would completely shake up this team. You don't need to move Nylander, like Masters said. That's $7 million contract for a guy that can produce. You're not replacing that for that value. You'll get a small couple pieces back. You'll get a lot of value for him. But the thing is, these guys aren't going to produce at a 40-goal season like Nylander is. With this Leafs team, it's all in, it seems like. We have Domi, we have Bertuzzi. This Leafs team looks better than any other team I've seen over the past couple of seasons. And I think management knows this. And if they get out to a hot start, and one of these teams, like I said, like the Jets, like the Flames, if one of these teams aren't in the hunt, I could see Brad Treliving being super active, not being afraid to ship out a bunch of prospects, a bunch of picks, a guy like Liljegren, just these guys to just make this massive splash. Maybe a guy like Connor Hellebuck could be on the radar too. It's just so many options when it gets close to deadline. These teams want to sell, especially the 1 year deal guys. And I think the Leafs have to be active, and guys like this they have to acquire.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with this, Mark. I really do think that Treliving's past in Calgary, he kind of wants to bring some of those players that he brought into there into Toronto. And I think, if he can get a player like Hanifin for a good deal towards the deadline to kind of bolster this Leafs defense going into the playoffs, I think this will just boost the Leafs' success in the playoffs. Obviously, they're looking for a cup. They're thirsty for it. They want to keep these four guys around. And if these four guys go out and win a cup this year, there's no reason, in my mind, that I don't think they'll re-sign, or even if they get for further, even if they get to the cup finals, I think if they get get a taste of it, they're all going to want to come back. And like you said here, an Eichel-Type trade is big news here in the NHL because that kind of came out of nowhere last year, and I think it's something that you can keep on your radar as a Leafs fan when that trade deadline's coming up, because I think Calgary's probably going to have another kind of down year this year, and like you said, you have all these guys that are expiring, and when you got these guys and Toronto has a little bit of space or can make space for, I think we could definitely see them end up on the Leafs by at the end of the season.
And the big thing is too, we've talked about it before, we have so many expiring deals. A guy like Nylander, Domi, Bertuzzi, Klingberg, Brody. That's a lot of cap going out. That's over $18 million. So if you acquire these guys at deadline that are on 1 year deals and these players are performing, you can look to resign them as well. It's not a situation where, oh, we're going into this offseason, well, next offseason. Nylander's on the expiring deal. If he walks, we're kind of screwed on the right wing on the top two pairings. But when you look at a trade like this, if we can get a guy like Hampus Lindholm and Hannafin, you have to give these guys raises as they're making around the $5 million mark. But the situation is, if you're losing a guy like Nylander and Brody, this will kind of make up that salary cap. The team might be looking for a new look at this point because, as much as I love this core of Mitch, Tavares, Marner, and or Nylander and Matthews, how long do you try it? How long is it before we have to be like, listen, we need a guy like Bertuzzi, Domi, Hampus Lindholm, not Hampus Lindholm, sorry, Elias Lindholm. Just these trades that could shake up this core, and with them getting the taste of the second round, we've seen it happen with Tampa. They got bounced by Columbus in the first round 1 year. It was a terrible look for them. They came back, they got the taste of the playoffs, they finally start pushing, and look where they are now. They won multiple cups, and I think Toronto's poised for this.
Yeah, I think Shanahan has a lot of faith in Brad Treliving, bringing him in to kind of shake up this core and push this team towards a Stanley Cup. And I think when you have that much faith in your GM, you kind of have the leeway to go out there and kind of shake it up. Because if the Leafs aren't, doing what they want, or we're performing the way they want towards the trade deadline, I think we could really see a shake up in this roster. But I really do think that the Leafs are going to have a great year this year with their goaltending, their improvements on D. I don't think that's going to be an issue. I think they're going to play the way they're meant to play. But definitely when the trade deadline comes up, definitely keep an eye on these guys like Lindholm and Hannafin and Scheifele and all these guys, even Hellebuck, if the goaltending situation isn't working out. I think these are all good guys to have on your radar that could definitely come to the Leafs in a blockbuster trade come trade deadline. But we're going to get into our next topic of the video here, which is everybody's favorite comment of the day. And the comment of the day today goes to Rob. And Rob says Zadorov and Oleksiak would improve our defense big time. And Mark, this is another guy who I never thought about was Oleksiak. I think this guy's a great defenseman, and I think he would just bolster the Leafs' def core tremendously.
If you add a Zadorov and Oleksiak, you kind of look at the situation too. You get two guys, I believe 6'7" and 6'6" between the two. So obviously these are two type of players I could see Brad making the call on if a team like Seattle or like we've talked about before, Calgary isn't in the hunt. But one thing to watch out for too is getting close to deadline. If you see a team that's struggling, a team maybe like Columbus, a team like the Ducks, and you see this disgruntled star, even maybe like a guy like Kirill Kaprizov, you could see a star player want out like Eichel, and we could even be looking at an even more massive trade going to the Leafs as well.
Can you imagine Patrick Laine in Toronto Maple Leafs uniform? Wouldn't that be great? I'm a big Laine person. I think that would be crazy if he ended up in Toronto. But I do think Toronto has a good shot this year at going out there and competing. I think they really do have the team. I think Treliving has made the right improvements and the right changes. Like I've been vocal on this channel before, but we'd like to know what your guys' thoughts are on this. Who do you think that Treliving and the Leafs should go at that trade deadline? Do you think this is the year like Wayne Gretzky does, or do you think we're due for a shake-up in the roster? I think it's going to be very interesting to see what comes trade deadline. But if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to go down, hit that like button, make sure to hit that subscribe button. We're trying to hit 1,000 subscribers before the season starts, so make sure to go down. We'd really love to see that happen. And I've been KC alongside my co-host Mark Pye. Keep your stick on the ice.